Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Flick Connection, and in less time than you normally spend scrolling for something to watch, we're going to talk about all the best stuff Prime Video has just added here in April 2024.
Well, now that is a very small drop in a very, very large bucket of drugs.
Now, it's a lot of stuff they've added this month. Yes, a lot of familiar favorites, but I'm going to tell you all of my top picks, including some of the best hidden gems they're adding this month. At the end of the video, I'll show you everything, the full list of everything they've added. But we're also going to talk about some brand new projects coming to Prime, including the new series based on the video game Fallout. Thanks to Sundays for sponsoring this video. We'll talk more about them in a little bit, but for now, let's talk about some of my top picks of the whole month, including movies like We Own the Night. Easily one of Joaquin Phoenix's most underrated movies. It's just an excellent cop film, deals with a lot of undercover stuff, has beautiful cinematography for such a grungy movie. A killer cast, but really Joaquin actually carries the movie. He's the lead and just does a bang-up job per usual. Easily one of my favorite things coming to the platform this month and one of the most rewatchable. They're also adding Lords of Dogtown, one I haven't seen in quite a long time. This is based on a true story and really is the story of the people who invented skateboarding as we know it today. It's actually an excellent movie. It's got a really great young cast in it. And Heath Ledger's got a really fantastic small role in this. He plays kind of the coach character, and per typical Heath Ledger, it just doesn't even look or sound like him. Just excellent stuff all around.
Who's that guy on camera 2?
You want to complain about it? Go ahead.
Who is it? Anybody know?
Was it a union thing?
Money Monster was directed by Jodie Foster, stars Julia Roberts, George Clooney, and it's a pretty good thriller. I would say it's a little bit mediocre considering who's involved in it, but you do get a really great performance from Jack O'Connell. This is one of those movies, if it had been a bunch of unknown people, I would have been just blown away and surprised how good it was. Jack O'Connell plays this troubled man who takes a news station hostage, and it's very much a pressure cooker situation. If you're the least bit interested in the setup, then this movie does deliver. It just doesn't deliver a whole lot beyond that. They're also adding Mimic, one of Guillermo del Toro's earlier movies, and it's just absolutely fantastic. This is a monster movie in kind of a classic sense of the word. They made a whole series of these, and some of them are okay, but the first one is just a highly rewatchable movie. It does have a few effects that are a little bit dated, but the majority of the visual effects in this movie are surprisingly effective for how old this movie is. Another one that's kind of mediocre on the scale, but I still like to recommend because it is unique, is Red Eye. This actually stars Cillian Murphy and Rachel McAdams, and again, it's kind of a pressure cooker situation. She meets him on a flight and then eventually discovers that he's got some very nasty intentions. This is actually from Wes Craven, and while it's not one of his best, it is one of his more underrated flicks. Another movie that fits in a similar category of kind of the modern day Alfred Hitchcock thing is Disturbia, starring Shia LaBeouf. This is one of his bigger roles that broke him out as he was a teenager, and it is a teenager version of Rear Window. That's essentially what this is, but as such, it's actually pretty fantastic. Remakes like this that end up geared towards a younger audience are rarely decent, and Disturbia is surprisingly good and actually holds up pretty well today for a PG-13 thriller. They're also adding Ong Bak, which is just one of the greatest martial arts movies of all time. I say greatest, it's probably either in the top 10 or close to it. Just amazing, real fight choreography, real stunts. Most of what you're seeing, with a few exceptions, is all happening in camera, and it's all fantastic stuff, making this movie a classic that also has a whole long list of sequels, but I highly recommend checking this one out if you're just even the least bit interested in martial arts flicks. They're also adding Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight, another Clooney movie that is just absolutely fantastic. Not only is he great in this, but Jennifer Lopez is amazing in this movie. I know she's had a good movie career, but following this one, I'm surprised she didn't have a bigger one. Honestly, she must have just not wanted one because they're both excellent in this movie. Don Cheadle's amazing, and as one of Soderbergh's earlier movies, it's just kind of remarkable how well this one holds up as well. I also consider The Big Short to be highly rewatchable. Not only is it funny, but it's informative and interesting. All the performances are amazing. The cast is just absolutely killer, all the way down to the smaller roles. I mean, every minute of this movie is so fantastic. And this is from the same guy that directed Anchorman and Talladega Nights. And his comedic style translated so well to a fairly serious movie like this.
His name's Yang. He won a national math competition in China. He doesn't even speak English. Yeah, I'm sure of the math.
Actually, my name's Jiang, and I do speak English. Jared likes to say I don't because he thinks it makes me seem more authentic.
But another serious movie with some funny people in it that's not really funny at all is Richard Jewell. This is based on the true story of Richard Jewell, who was a man who saved a bunch of lives at the Olympic bombings here in Atlanta, but was then sort of prosecuted in the media and hunted down by our government. It's actually a wild story, and it can be really upsetting, but Paul Walter Hauser's performance as Richard Jewell is absolutely amazing. The movie's directed by Clint Eastwood. Sam Rockwell plays his lawyer. Everybody is absolutely fantastic in this movie. I highly recommend it. Some other familiar favorites included Jarhead, if you didn't get enough of Jake Gyllenhaal's muscles in Roadhouse.
I'm about ready to punch that time card.
But if you want a modern warfare movie with a bit more action than Jarhead, they're also adding Lone Survivor, easily one of the best in its category. They're also adding Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, yes, the one with the nipples on the costumes. I've never liked either of those Joel Schumacher Batman movies, but I will say Batman and Robin is actually good for quite a few laughs if you watch it with the right mindset. For some classic movies, they're adding Chinatown, one that does hop around on streaming services, but is regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time, and is certainly one of the greatest detective movies of its kind. It is fairly long and can feel slow, but my goodness, it's so good, and when you watch it, you can see how it has influenced so many other movies like it that have been made since. Movie buffs, Chinatown is required viewing, and it's high up on the list. It's like one of the first you need to watch. But interestingly, they're also adding Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ, a movie I rarely see available on streaming services, and a movie I highly recommend. Now, this was a insanely controversial movie when it came out. I mean, there were protests, picket lines, the whole thing. They thought it was just so anti-religious. However, I think it has a really insightful look at the last temptation of Christ. But before you get to that point in this movie, it's actually just a Jesus movie, very much like Jesus of Nazareth or something like that. However, Willem Dafoe is playing Jesus Christ, and even though that seems like an odd choice today, Willem Dafoe is just an amazing actor. He does a killer job, and again, Scorsese directs this thing very well, but then the way that the end is handled is really what elevates this movie and makes it a really thought-provoking piece. They're also adding Scorsese's The Aviator, a movie I do love and highly recommend, not just because it's a great story about Howard Hughes and has amazing cinematography, but the way it explores his obsessive-compulsive disorder I thought was really brilliant. It's slow. They start teasing it in very, very early in the movie, but if you go back and watch it, you can see it start to manifest itself from the beginning all the way through the end where it completely incapacitates him. And that is ultimately what the movie is about. You know, it's in almost every single element, yet you also get just incredible performances from a lot of top-tier actors. If that's not enough DiCaprio for you, they are also adding Titanic, which is just easily one of the greatest, planned emergencies to ever be shot on film. I say planned emergency, not that the Titanic was a planned emergency. James Cameron's movies are these planned disasters, and they are just breathtaking to watch. Titanic, though, for a movie that's 25 years old, there are some visual effects that you can see, but for the most part, this movie still looks insanely convincing. But one of the better action movies this month is the original Total Recall with Schwarzenegger. Just a solid sci-fi action movie with an epic story directed by Paul Verhoeven. Really cool effects and just a lot of fun and, you know, just a highly rewatchable Schwarzenegger flick. I told you there was a long list, and again, at the end of this video, I'm showing you the full list. That way you can pick out a couple of titles maybe I didn't notice. But for some comedies, they're going to be adding Wayne's World, one I haven't seen in forever.
Both you and I know that there is no film in this camera.
Nebraska is one I actually highly recommend. Bruce Dern is amazing in this movie. It's one of the greatest performances of his entire career. And Will Forte plays his son, who's a great comedy actor. I mean, one of my favorites, but he does this dramatic role really well. And the movie is quite funny at times, but it also deals with a lot of family dynamics, aging parents. It's also directed by Alexander Payne, who's most famous for Sideways. He also has a brand new movie that got nominated for tons of awards that is getting added to Prime later in April. I also recommend Fighting with My Family. It is a good family movie to watch. Not for young kids, it's rated PG-13, but it's a true story of a family of wrestling fanatics, and 2 of the kids grow up to try to join the WWE. Again, true story. Florence Pugh is the lead. She's really great. There's a lot of funny elements to it. Vince Vaughn plays the WWE coach. He's really good in this as well. Wrestling fans, I think this is a must watch, but if you've got tweens or teenagers, this could be a really good family watch as well. Blockers is not one to watch with the family. You've got John Cena and a bunch of other folks in this movie trying to stop their daughter from having sex at a party. Not the greatest raunchy comedy, but it is good for a few laughs. And honestly, when you watch this movie and really anything else John Cena does, I think part of his success is that he seems to be willing to do anything movie producers ask him to do. Then my last pick, one of my favorite movies that they've already added here on April 1st, is Guy Ritchie's Snatch.
Do you like dogs? Dogs. What?
Yeah, dogs.
Dogs. Do you like dogs? Oh, dogs.
Also on April 1st, they added House, seasons 1 through 8. I'm not big on revisiting TV shows, but I know that's one of those shows that people just like to put on and binge watch. So I'll say smart move on Amazon's part for adding something like that this month. They don't do that often, and Netflix has seemingly a lot of success doing just that. Now, there's a lot of new stuff coming to Prime this month, including the new Fallout series, but before talking about all that, I do want to speak directly to the dog owners listening, because today's sponsor, Sundays, actually extended the life of our dog, Peanut. Sundays is air-dried dog food that contains 90% human-grade meat. That means meat safe for you and I to eat, but the other 10% is just vegetables with no synthetic ingredients. And because it's air-dried, Sundays is shelf-stable. There's no messy prep, cleanup. It's not going to spoil the way other fresh dog food brands can. I mean, you just dump this stuff in the bowl and they gobble it up. And I know from using other fresh dog food that not only can you make a mess with it, but older dogs can make a real mess with that wet stuff, and you get none of that with Sundays. And it's more nutritious than the typical dog food you're maybe getting at the store, but Sundays can actually save you money. Because they're not wasting money on refrigeration, ice packs to ship it to you, they just pass the savings on to you, and they're only focused on a short list of premium ingredients. In fact, Sundays can cost 40% less than other fresh dog food brands, but for a limited time, my viewers can save an additional 50% off on top of that already great price when they use my link in the video description, or just go to sundaysfordogz.com/flick. I mean, really, our Peanut got to a point where she was not digesting food that she ate for a really long time, and we thought her days were numbered, and simply switching to Sundays completely changed that. She was able to keep it all down and was processing it a lot better. Again, to get your dog better nutrition and to maybe save some money, go to sundaysfordogz.com/flick to get that discount. It's a great deal. Speaking of great stuff though, let's talk about everything else Prime is adding this month. Where they're actually adding quite a bit of horror, especially for April. Pet Sematary Bloodlines gets added on April 2nd, which was actually a Paramount Plus original movie. If you didn't catch it over there, it's coming to Prime. Not one I recommend. In fact, it's not even as good as the more recent remake. But if you're into the genre, you may dig it. For some more scary movies, on the 9th, they're adding the new The Exorcist Believer. From what I've heard, this one goes into a wild direction, gets crazy over the top, and is, you know, not very good, but as a fan of wild, over-the-top stuff, I'm sure to watch it, and who knows, maybe I'll recommend it with a, right context sometime in the future. And then on the 11th, they're adding the new Fallout series, which is one of their bigger projects in a while. In fact, maybe the biggest since their Lord of the Rings spin-off series. And honestly, they have not had a lot of success with these big projects that have a huge fan base built into them, like the Fallout games do. Those fan bases just, for whatever reason, have not been digging what Amazon has been dishing out, with the exception of The Boys, because that show's awesome, and honestly, the success of the show kind of outweighs the success of the source material. Fallout has the same potential. With its funky, retro-style, post-apocalyptic stuff, they could potentially have a lot of fun with this one, so I'm looking forward to it. But it also stars Walton Goggins, and based on what I've seen from Fallout, it looks like a top-notch performance from him. At a minimum, odds are the show's got a little bit more going for it than that. On the 22nd, they're adding Spectre. Not one of my favorite Bond movies, but I've only seen it a couple times, and I do recall the entire opening sequence being my favorite of the entire movie, and one of my favorite from the whole Daniel Craig series, even if I didn't love the movie as much as his other ones. Now on the 25th, there's some more scary stuff with a returning anthology series titled Them. Now I watched the first season of Them, and the second season looks like it's dealing with similar themes, but with different characters. The first season dealt with a black family moving into an all-white neighborhood, and there were some very eerie elements to that one that really got under my skin, some really creepy visuals. It was a surprisingly frightening horror series, and had vibes of like Jordan Peele's Get Out, even though the themes kind of went in different directions. Point is, horror fans, check out the first season of Them. It's available on Prime now, and get ready for season 2, which again will be a continuation of an anthology series. And then finally on the 29th, they're adding Alexander Payne's The Holdovers, a movie that just got so many award nominations this past year, and deservedly so. It's a solid flick. My only real disappointment with this movie is that people are so head over heels in love with it, and honestly, we should be getting more movies like this. This movie should not be nearly as special as it is, because it's a pretty straightforward story, yet it's just expertly told, really great performances, and it's just an enjoyable watch. It's got some very funny moments in it, like all of Alexander Payne's movies, but it also deals with some very heavy themes, and it handles them just, again, perfectly. I don't love this movie. It's not a crazy strong recommendation the way some people do. I mean, some people love this movie. I just feel like something like this shouldn't be nearly as unique as it is, but it actually is, because movies like this are rarely as good as The Holdovers. If you love Alexander Payne's other movies, you gotta see this one on April 29th. That is the list of everything I do recommend. Here is the full list of everything Prime Video has just recently added. It's a long list, and don't forget to go check out the Sundays link in the description. It really is a great way to take better care of your dog. But I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Prime Video episode, and you will see me on the next one.